afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate Pirelli. I'm a partner at Seyfarth Shaw in Boston. I'm a member of our firm's executive committee, and Seyfarth, just a little bit on us before I introduce this esteemed panel. Seyfarth's an international firm with one of our domestic offices here in Boston. And the Boston team here are proud members of this New England community located in the Seaport, our innovation district, as we like to call it, and others do. The Boston team here offers full range of legal services and serves as strategic advisors for local companies, national, global clients across a wide range of industries, including healthcare, life sciences, pharma, tech, financial services, hospitality, and retail. And we are absolutely thrilled to continue our almost decade-long sponsorship of this wonderful Pinnacle event. I've been on the board of the chamber for 15 years. The firm has been on a member of the board, member of the chamber rather, for a long time, 15 years. And I've been on the board for probably about 10 years now. And I so look forward to this Pinnacle event every year, as do our clients that we invite to the in-person events. I always feel incredibly inspired, as I'm sure some of you are feeling after the events this morning. I actually also feel just a little bit inadequate after the awards ceremony when I hear all the amazing stories of the award recipients. So welcome to this particular Pinnacle workshop. It's called Managing and Mentoring a Hybrid Workforce, and obviously an incredibly apt topic for what we've all been through. And we have a panel of experts today from Accenture, Otsuka, Rapid7, and Vertex. And they're going to reflect on the lessons that they've learned and working with a virtual workforce over the length of this pandemic, and applying them to the new ever-changing and probably permanent hybrid workforce that we're all dealing with these days. I want to note that the webinar is being recorded and will be shared on Chamber's YouTube in case you have friends who want to tune in. Please be sure to submit your questions throughout the event using the Q&A feature or by emailing questions to chamberprograms@bostonchamber.com. Now, without further ado, I'd love to welcome our speakers. Moderating today's panel is Marcia Williams, who's an Associate Director, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at Vertex. Marcia holds a PhD in neuroscience from Brandeis University and a Bachelor of Arts degree in neuroscience and behavior and language studies from the University of California at Santa Cruz. She'll be moderating today, and speaking on the panel today is Roseanne Williams, Learning and Leadership Development Director at Accenture. Roseanne has spent her career driving innovation, thought leadership, and impact and workforce development for organizations across industry sectors and geographies. So welcome, Roseanne. Also on the panel today is Angela Colon Mahoney, who's a Vice President of People and Business Services at Otsuka. Angela leads the enterprise in supporting all people in business services. She's driven by the belief that people can thrive and can achieve their professional ambitions while balancing work and family priorities. So welcome today. Our final speaker is Sanam Rozagi Feldman, who's a Vice President of People Strategy at Rapid7. Sanam leads global people strategy and development initiatives across Rapid7 as the VP of People Strategy. And in that role, she's responsible for driving the design and execution of talent strategies in a way that is tightly aligned with business goals and deeply rooted in Rapid7's unique culture and core values. I'm going to pass the program over to Marcia to begin the program. I hope you enjoy it and enjoy the rest of the program. I hope to see you at the award ceremony, if not there, at the next in-person event. So good luck and enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kate. I'm Mauricia Donald, Associate Director for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and it is a pleasure to be moderating this panel today. I'm looking forward to learning from these experts who've actually been in practice of mentoring and managing in a hybrid workforce for the past 2+ years. I'm looking forward to learning about their best practices and ways of working that will help us to all be successful as we navigate this post-COVID landscape. That said, I wanted to start with some questions around mentoring and connecting, which I think is going to be really important, as many folks have been working throughout this pandemic, and some folks are just heading back to office. And so this topic of mentoring, connecting, I think is really contemporary. And we understand that a key aspect of connecting with employees is making them feel heard and seen. So I'd like to ask our panelists, what are some ways that your companies are ensuring that all employees have a voice?
So go ahead, Roseanne.
This is Roseanne, happy to be here. And I can share a perspective from Accenture. I think for sure, one of the things that we are focusing on is listening a lot more and using techniques like sentiment analysis, focus groups, surveys, et cetera, to really understand how our people are feeling, what's important to them. And actually beyond the listening, we're actually involving our employees in co-solutioning the future. So we had a very simple technique that we've been using is something called change at work events. And they're kind of like hackathons, but gives people a chance to talk about and share their ideas of what they would like the solutions around hybrid workforce to look like. And that's been really effective. Angela, over to you.
Thank you. So, it's interesting. We had an originally, I would call an in-office culture, even though we do have a sales force at Otsuka. And we started to do things, believe it or not, by design. And what we did is we started to design what we called leader chats. So you have vice presidents coupled together and they bring forward the topics that are most relevant to employees, topics in social media, topics, that are happening in the world, and topics around, hybrid workforce, mentoring, work-life balance. And we found that these small groups actually started to be very honest about what they're experiencing, how they want to see things differently in the workplace. But the beauty of it is that people who would never connect in the past started talking to one another. Leaders who would never connect with employees together started talking to one another. So we've continued this through the pandemic. Now that we're coming back, quote unquote, to the office, which we'll talk about later, we're continuing those as well.
This is Sanam. I'm very happy to be here. I think the only thing I would add in terms of Rapid7 is when we first went into a hybrid environment, we really leaned into our core value and our culture of creating an environment of openness and of authenticity. One of our core values is bring you. And in doing that, we made sure that the communication was open both ways. So we started daily announcements to the company and kind of sharing feedback on what's going on and asking questions and really ensuring that we were responding. So when we heard that our employees were really struggling with work-life balance and the personal management of the pandemic and the crisis 2 years ago, we brought people in to have those conversations and help provide support to our employees. So for the last 2 years, I feel like we really tried to have this balance of providing information and responding to feedback. We also implemented, what we've talked about, which is like surveys to ensure that we know what feedback employees have of their managers, employee engagement surveys across the company, and all of those things, as long as you respond and that you have that two-way dialogue becomes really important. And as we lean into coming back in, which we will talk about, I think being flexible as an employer in hearing that people are going to go through their own change management as people come back and responding and having a point of view in terms of what is needed for the business and the company, but also being flexible to respond in the right way. We also at Rapid7 have Inside Coffees, which we launched about 6 years ago, which is a coffee initiative where you could basically have coffee with anyone across the company and reach out to them and get to know each other. That was an inclusive type of program we had 6 years ago that we leaned into through the pandemic and is really helping us through that to make sure that people have those connections and are speaking with each other and have a voice within the company.
Thank you so much. What I'm hearing is a lot of sentiment surveys, a lot of listening, and I loved Roseanne's term co-solutioning. So a partnership and sort of engineering the way forward. And I think those are all important as we consider reconnecting in this new landscape. I also heard a lot about individual connection. So not a lot of systems interventions, but those one-on-one listenings, those coffee chats, those open forums. And I think that that's also become very important in the pandemic as we framed this out in an initial sort of ask, these opportunities for folks to feel seen and heard as individuals, I think are really wonderful. And I love to hear that you've implemented those practices in your organizations. So continuing with this sort of thought about connecting, reconnecting, and forging a new way forward, work from home blurred a lot of lines and boundaries. Employees worked longer hours, from early mornings to late nights. And now with folks coming back into the office, many people, again, have already been coming into the office. Folks are losing hours in their commutes. And initially in the pandemic, there was a lot of talk about people working from home and the reduced productivity, the potential for reduced productivity. How are you all viewing that as we return to office? What are some ways that you've been discussing maintaining work-life balance for your employees as we face this new way of working again?
Well,
Go ahead, Angela, please.
no, Roseanne, we'll follow a cadence here, please.
Okay, great. Well, I think you're absolutely right, Marisha. We found that people, probably us included, were working more hours, and the work-life balance just wasn't there. And there are a lot of reasons for it, right? I mean, I think we might have felt that our contribution wasn't as evident if we weren't in the office. It sort of led us to the more hours. There was also missing the casual conversation, the you didn't kind of run into people to ask that question, to get some answer done, to make a decision. So it led to like meeting after meeting after meeting virtually. But here we are, and people have adapted to it with technologies and other ways. And I would say that there are some practices that we at Accenture have adopted, and probably even before the pandemic, where we have been a distributed company for a long time. Many of our employees have worked remotely, but there are some really simple things. Number one, just block, and they're tactical and might seem obvious. Just block time off on your calendar every day. And we encourage people to do that. You just block the time off. It's not available for others, and do what you need to do to take care of yourself, your health and well-being, and your family. Two, we have some, we've adopted sort of like the no internal meetings on Fridays, give people a chance to just catch up on their work and that type of thing. Things like don't always be on video. And it was so greatly embraced to be on video when we first started the pandemic. And now we know about screen fatigue. We know that it can take so much effort to always be on video. So it's like, it's okay to not be on video. Walking meetings. Again, you're not on a video, so just use a time where you're on a meeting as appropriate to be walking around, and you kind of finding those, those ways to take care of your health and well-being. So just a couple of simple but effective techniques that we have found. Angela.
And I agree with everything Roseanne said, and we started to implement and institute different policies, the Focus Fridays, the take your lunch break, and we're a global organization, so your days and your time shift. We also, and just this morning as a leadership team, we have to take work out of the system and help the organization prioritize. And it goes back to what Roseanne was saying, back to the basics in some way. Get clear about the business, the strategy. How are you making a contribution? And what are the, what's number one, number two, number three? We lost sight of that over time as a leadership team. And now that we're going through, I would call it the next chapter of Otsuka, in this beautiful, complex, ever-changing industry, we are now saying we have to get clear about that too, so then our employees know how to prioritize as well. So I think, up until, literally this morning, we have those conversations and we're listening to our people and responding.
Yeah, I think these are all really good points. The only thing I think I would probably add is that this whole concept of work-life balance and the blurred lines that happened 2 years ago, for me, and I think for a lot of the folks we speak to, has fundamentally changed how we think about work-life balance. And I think we have to lean into that change and be comfortable with two things. One is all of us in our organizations, the business needs to work through what do we need to ensure that we continue to operate within the culture that we've built. Some people will be hybrid, some people will be in person, some people will be home. And I think, every company has to really look in to say, what do we need for our employees to build a community and for it to work? I think this concept that we weren't going to be productive in a hybrid environment or in a remote environment at the beginning of the pandemic was fascinating, because I do think everyone was highly productive and work-life balance kind of fell off. And I don't think anyone predicted that. I think as people come back, every person has to really think about what's important to them. Like, what does work-life balance mean to you? Because it's probably different than it meant 2 years ago. And what do you need in your life and in your work for it to work for you? Do you need walking meetings? Do you need to be off camera? Do you need to be in the office a little bit more? Or do you need to be home a little bit more? And really understand your values and your priorities and find that match with what you need to do for your job and for your family. And I think that that's hard work. And I don't think there's one answer for everybody. So really leaning into your priorities, your values, and giving yourself the time and the patience to figure that out, because it's probably going to take some time. And that's okay. And that's where the prioritization becomes really, really, really important. And that it is different for everybody.
Thank you so much. I hear tactical practices. I hear a lot of self-determination. So as folks are re-entering the workforce, the workplace, there is this sort of responsibility they take on themselves to sort of understand what it is they need and how it is that they're going to put that into action to be successful in the workplace. But under that, I hear a bit about a culture. So this culture as we return to the workplace, and the culture that we had left is maybe not the culture that we're coming back to. And to tie that all together, culture is sort of a function of the interplay of place and people. And as we return to a new place, maybe, how are we guiding people and through the face-to-face connection, maybe through mentorship, and helping them to grow those relationships that will show them, that will model for them how to be in the workplace.
Sanam, do you want to go first? Maybe we'll mix it up a little bit.
Sure. I think I could go. Yes, I could go first. I think that the mentorship is a really important piece of this. And the self-determination is a big piece of it. So I will say what we've talked a lot about at Rapid7 is this mentorship relationship, your personal accountability to making it work is really, really important. And I think what we've learned by being remote for 2 years is that it matters less whether or not you're in person or not, which I think opens up the window to who is your mentor, which I think is great. What matters much more is that you're able to have relevant and valuable conversations, and that you know what you want to get out of a mentorship relationship, and that you're able to work through all of the dynamics around being remote. Matters much less than your own determination, what you're trying to actually achieve with your mentor. Building a tight relationship virtually, I think, is hard. But we've made it work. There's some people that I had been working with for 2 years that I met in person only last night, which was wonderful because they were taller than I thought they were. But you could build warm relationships. You just have to be much more deliberate and intentional, and you have to make, I find, a little bit more of an effort so you can build that connection.
Well said. We this is front and center for us and timely. We have a network of Otsuka women, and it's one of, I would say, our longest running and strong ERGs. And they just rolled out a mentoring program in virtual, right? So you have that inclusivity and also the ability, like you're saying, these new employees to connect, right? To be able to have someone to navigate this environment. Some have never seen, the walls of Otsuka in Princeton or in Rockville. And now they have someone to help them not only navigate, but to also build this great community. But Sanam, I like how you said it, it's hard to build those relationships virtually. You have to give a little more. And then also we're looking to create an environment where we're looking at our brick and mortar, so to speak, as places to be immersed in our culture, to collaborate, to come at certain points in time, whether you're in the field or you're in quote unquote home office, and be able to actually see people in person. Because I'll tell you, when we get together, we are happy people here, because we miss one another. But the employees who've never experienced that, and when they do, it's just magic. And that's where we want to continue to tweak until we get that balance right. But mentoring, and I would say big thank you to our Now group, is definitely one of the ways in which we're going to be able to do that.
Angela, I really liked your point about acknowledging that getting together in person is really important. Now, I personally, as I said, I've been a remote employee for many years. I have supervised teams all over the world. I've gone more than 2 years without meeting people, and have been able to, through the good fortune of a great culture that we have at Accenture, that I've been able to feel so deeply connected to those employees. So I think that's great. That said, it is really important to find those times where we can be together in person. And I think that's a big part of our sort of back to the new normal, or, over to the new normal strategy, is acknowledge that hybrid is here to stay, and that part of that has to include those times that we come together. So I think that's a really important thing. And on the culture piece, really, I think we've all started to think about culture really transcends space and place. It is about relationships, it's about people. So if we continue to focus on that, I think we'll do just fine with our mentor-mentee relationships.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will add one thing, Angela. I loved when you said, like, when you come in and you see us, we're happy people. Like, I think that really speaks to, I know that a lot of people have been concerned about coming back and like changing back from hybrid to in-person and want to stay remote. But I do think when you come back together, whether it's for an event or because you're coming back to the office, the physical manifestation of the culture and being together and remembering the trust and the relationships and how fun it could be, contributes to a lot of things, including just more stickiness towards the mission of the company and the engagement to the work, building that trust, and the work-life balance of like work can be fun, right? Like work is not only Zoom meetings. And for me, I like being in the office. That's just me. That's a personal preference. For me, it helps me with the work-life balance, because when I'm home, I'm home. When I'm in the office, I'm able to see and feel the experience of being at Rapid7 culturally, which I think is an amazing place. So I loved when you said that. It's so true.
Thank you all. And Roseanne, you said something which was, I think, a wonderful segue into a discussion around how we move into working in a hybrid workforce. And I guess when I say hybrid workforce, when I speak about the whole workforce, like the workforce holistically, the hybrid composition of folks who are in the office full time, people who are working from home part-time, people who are working remotely for the entirety of their employment experience with an organization. And you mentioned that people connections and coming together and recognizing that that's really important is something that we should take under consideration as we return to the office. So my question for the panel is, what else should CEOs, CHROs, and other culture workers consider when they are rolling out and executing on return to office plans?
So my advice would be, we have an opportunity right in front of us right now. And there is a world of talent that we have yet to meet, and a generation that has yet to be seen or understand who our companies are, and to have the ability to continue this hybrid environment, to understand, as we're saying, what employees today and tomorrow are looking for, and being flexible will be everything, because you're not only bringing people back to you today, but also back for tomorrow. So be as flexible as possible, be open-minded, and your culture, if you have a strong culture, it will come through. You just have to find ways in which to do it. And that's the journey that we're all on right now.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead.
I totally agree with that, Angela, the flexibility. The other thing that we talk about this concept at Accenture that sounds a little out there, but it really resonates with me, of a concept of omni-connectedness. So what we say is, yes, we need to be flexible and offer different options. 2, we want to find those times to be in the office. 3, we need to recognize that one size does not fit all. People want to know what the decision framework is for their, and then use that framework with their leadership to say, okay, for the work that I need to do, I can have this model. This is the model that works for me, and it's going to be different by person. But this concept of omni-connectedness really does bring to the forefront that it's about the work that you do. It is not really about the place and space. And to the extent that we can stay connected to one another, and find those ways to have the human connection regardless of where we work, it's really, really important. And especially, as you said, Marisha, we're going to have different models. You're going to have people that are in the office all the time. You're going to have people that are home all the time. You're going to have some combination. And we're going to have to find those ways to create the sort of equitable, omni-connected experience. And by the way, omni does not mean all the time, but really just transcending this, again, the space and place, and finding that human connection.
I really appreciate that you put in there that we need to create the way back as an equitable path. That was wonderful.
I agree. That's so well said. I think what I would add to that is there's 2 principles that we've learned through this and through coming back to the office. And we've been in the journey of trying to create this hybrid environment that works for us and our employees, is that I think it's really important to continue to lean into the why behind the decisions that companies are making. Why is it important to create an inclusive hybrid environment? Why is it important to adapt our approach to the feedback we're hearing to employees? Why is it important to be together, to build those meaningful connections and be together as a company towards our mission? So I think speaking to the why versus speaking to I'm hearing that these employees want to work from home and these employees want to be remote. So if you have 2 direct reports, you have to be, like those types of tactics. I mean, although maybe important, are not meaningful if you don't have the why behind it. So really having a philosophy as to what is your culture, what do you need as a company to reinforce, and then it's a lot easier to have people go through their own change management around what that means and what the changes are if they understand the why and they're bought into it, because that's a 2-way street. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is the growth mindset around it, which is none of us really have had all the answers throughout the last 2 years. And anyone who thinks does not have a growth mindset, because we don't, and we didn't. And so as we go through this evolution, and as we try to bring people back, or have a really healthy remote culture or hybrid culture, I think being open to the feedback and being open to breaking some traditional kind of philosophies around it and testing it out, and then coming back to your basics that is your culture and your why, I think is really, really important. And making it fair and equitable and consistent and inclusive. The fact that those are core value concepts that everyone is leaning into, I think is an amazing positive component of what has happened in the last 2 years.
Thank you. So I'm very excited because we're at the audience Q&A portion of our panel. And we have some really great questions from the audience. It's a challenge because I don't know that we're going to get through them all, but this is a really big one. So this audience member shares that 60 to 70% of America's workforce must be in a work environment and does not have the privilege of flexibility. How much of your workforce can enjoy work from home? And do you think that this new flexibility for some will create divisions within the workforce? Finally, this is all the same question. How are you managing and mentoring the people who must report to a workplace in terms of finding balance?
That's a fantastic question. I'll start by saying we are learning and listening along the way, and we're also trying to create an environment that is on par. So I'll give you a good example. We had an end of year event last year. A good portion of folks couldn't make it. So you actually had people carrying iPads, and their buddy was someone that was, online. We just had another offsite where we had breakout groups. One was an entire hybrid breakout group. So they were, breaking out together, and we were, talking. And then you had the others that were in person. The fear is you do create or may create factions, and we're really listening and keeping an eye on that, because when the collaboration piece comes, we're respecting people who have issues where they wouldn't be able to travel or come in, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're not creating the quote unquote in-out groups now. So do I think we will succeed at not doing that? I do, as long as we're deliberate about being extremely conscious of not doing that.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Angela, and it's such an important question. It's interesting because I think as we've been thinking about the hybrid model and acknowledging that some people are going to be in the office, some people are going to be remote. Sometimes you have to bring people together in a meeting, if you will, regardless of where they are. We have tended to think about the people that are remote and to ensure that there isn't a sort of proximity bias that's happening. So think about you're in a meeting, you sort of like walk off, and it could be a Zoom meeting where everyone's on Zoom and everyone's on video, and it seems like we're all together. The people in person go off and have a lunch break, and there's talking about something, and they kind of come back, and the remote person kind of missed out somehow. So there is definitely this concept of the proximity bias that we have to be intentional about, like acknowledging it, training people on it, making sure that you have certain techniques. There's nothing in your process, job work flow, the way you conduct your meetings that might impact the remote person differently. That said, the question really raised something important in my mind, which is there is a bias that can be that can come up for the individual whose job, whether by choice or whose job doesn't allow them to be remote, and we have to equally be cognizant of that. So that I think that is a really, really important question and acknowledgement.
Yeah, I think so too. The only thing I would add to that is that is going to be a conflict that we as a community are going to need to figure out. And also, I think we have to hold a really high bar to saying, that we're going to start like treating people differently. I think there's some cases where you have to be in person. And I think we're going to need to figure out, again, like I said, as a community on how to balance that, because you don't want to start treating people completely or not realizing that you have different circumstances there. I think having empathy is a strength that we have used a lot in the last 2 years, and we have to remember that. And we have to remember that as we come back, and ensuring that we're deliberate in removing obstacles where we can for people.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that that's a really great segue into this next question. So this audience member asks, listening to all of these things that you're putting into place for well-being, I'm curious why this issue wasn't a priority before the pandemic, and what will ensure that it remains a priority in your company going forward?
That's a really good question. Another great question. I think that, well, I know that my company has emphasized health and wellness for a long time. Have we, and I'm sure yours have as well, have we sort of elevated our focus on that in the last couple of years? Absolutely. And I think it is just a function of we have become more human in the way that we interact. The lines are blurred. We are seeing each other in a different way, feeling more vulnerable. And that has just given rise to the importance that we have on work-life balance. And so I'm very confident. This is one of those things that we have learned that we don't want to go back to. So, there's just the whole back to normal is too much that we have learned, too much goodness. Quite honestly, we have to take that forward. And this is exactly one of those: health and wellness and just care, safety, and health of our people.
I think that goes directly back to what Sanam was saying earlier around the growth mindset. Like, we've learned so much, we've grown so much, we've been able to take in so much input this past couple of years, and it should not go to waste.
Yeah, 2019 is not coming back. And I think we have to embrace the positive of that. And we were in a health and wellness crisis as a world. And so I think that's why we leaned into it. Rapid7 has always, just like Accenture has always been focused on wellness, right? And taking care of the people of our company and our customers. But we were in a crisis. So we were able to lean into it even more and ask each other how we were doing and how our health and wellness was, which when I started in the workplace, like, that's not even a conversation that ever happened. So I think that's great. And I think that will continue. And I hope to continue to have that openness and that empathy, and for people to lean into it and see babies on Zooms and give people space when they need it and all of those great things. I think some things from the pandemic I would like to forget and never remember again, but those things I think we need to keep.
Amen. Amen. And you said it before too, Sanam, we've reevaluated our relationship with our jobs. Let's be honest. We're different people. We've reprioritized, and now we're focusing a bit more on self, while in some cases trying to go back to 2019. I think we're quickly finding out that it's not working. So that balance is critical, and how we continue this dialogue, continue learning from one another, and continuing to listen is everything.
Thank you. And we are coming to the close of our session. There are so many really wonderful and rich audience questions that we were not able to get to. I hope our panelists might be willing to continue the conversation on LinkedIn or beyond this space. But before we depart, I want to ask one more question of the panel. And the question is, before we leave from this space, what is one piece of advice you have for organizations and employees navigating through keeping employees motivated and engaged in the new landscape?
I can start. I think I would say that we have to be a little forgiving of ourselves. So, and just acknowledge that while we have human resilience is very strong, but the reserves have been pulled on over the last couple of years and they continue to be. And so if we are feeling that work just isn't the most important thing right now, that trust your instinct, because human behavior sort of tells us what is most important for us to be focusing on. So I'd say just be a little bit forgiving of yourself, trust your instincts, and know that you can be productive anywhere. And we're in a good place. I'm very hopeful.
Thank you.
I agree. And, for me, it's the one thing that if I do an eye roll, it's about, coming back or going back. It's about tomorrow. If you're about reinvention and endless possibility, this is the vortex in life. And it's a gift that's given to all of us. So seize it and move forward, because it is about tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And continue to lean into your passions, like remember why you do what you do, and really focus on the future and just stay resilient and give yourself grace. So I that's the best I could say. And I love what Roseanne and Angela said about that as well.
Well, I just want to give a tremendous thanks to our panelists. Thank you so much for your wisdom and insights and for your candor. A major thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for holding this space and offering us this opportunity to have this conversation. And a huge thanks to the audience who provided us with such rich questions, and an opportunity to really think about what it will look like to work in a new way and to go forward with a growth mindset and with a great amount of empathy for ourselves and for others.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.